Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
The Daily Compliance News for September 21, 2021, the Gutting Corruption Enforcement Edition. And we begin with that story of how the Texas GOP gutted public corruption enforcement in the state of Texas. They did this by defunding the central unit in the state capital of Austin and sending corruption cases out to the county where the alleged corrupt official lived. This had a couple of factors. Number one, it required the localities to pay for it, which of course they weren't compensated for by the state, and so they refused to basically pay. And they couldn't get any lawyers to take the cases because all the prosecutors recused themselves because they all knew the state officials. It also put these state officials in their home counties. And it was a very invidious way by the state, but they have now killed off any public corruption investigations in the state of Texas, and they've been running corrupt governments since then. Next up, Allianz asset management head Jacqueline Hunter is scheduled to depart the company, as reported by the Wall Street Journal. She's in talks to leave the company as it navigates a Justice Department probe into a group of investment funds that suffered steep losses last year. The considerations are long-standing and strategic in nature, according to a statement from the company. A person familiar with the talks says Mrs. Hunt wanted to leave earlier this year before the DOJ notified Allianz about the investigation. She cited clashes over a corporate culture that had accumulated over time. There's no departure date yet, but any successor must be approved by a German regulator. Next up, from a raw story, a first-time contributor to the Daily Compliance News, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg is alleged to have agreed to push conservatism on his platform as part of an agreement with the Trump administration. In a new book entitled The Contrarian, Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power, the venture capitalist Thiel told a confidant that he and Zuckerberg met with the former president, Jared Kushner, and their spouses in the White House in 2019, where the Facebook founder promised not to fact-check political speech if the administration agreed not to impose heavy-handed regulations. Obviously, another blow for Facebook, as now it appears it was in league with the Trump administration around the election. And finally, the World Bank has canceled its flagship Doing Business report after the recent investigation showed that undue influence was brought on the auditors of the World Bank. The former head of the World Bank, who's now the head of the IMF, says she did nothing wrong and nothing untoward and no conflicts of interest. But this decision by the World Bank to drop the report speaks volumes about the position the World Bank found itself in because of China attempting to alter data affecting it in the World Bank's ranking. So a very big black eye for the World Bank. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.